Welcome. I'm Kinetic Symphony. I hunt down and report on weird and true mysterious stories, from glitches to the paranormal. Would you like even more content? Here's my Patreon. Now onto the stories. Bonus Incredible File, written by Snoo61002. Chronicles of a Demonologist and a Church Chaplain. Peace be upon you. I've been asked many times now, in response in conversations here, to share my experiences as an Order of St. John Chaplain and Demonologist. It's hard to know where to start, to be honest, but the most important thing I think is to say that these are my beliefs and experiences. I certainly don't begrudge you yours, and definitely don't want to assert any kind of authority over the beliefs of others. As chaplains, we are not positioned within a church because we minister to communities. It is not our place to judge any member of that community, but only to care for and support them in their needs. Also, rule number 1 of the job is to disprove, and disprove again. Here are a few experiences, some insight into our processes, what I'm allowed to speak to, how I got into the field, and then the training I undertook. Experiences. General and passive paranormal experiences are part and parcel of the job. I'll touch on it more later. But I'm not afraid of things that go bump in the night. I used to be, but once you've studied and understand it, the paranormal loses its excitement and becomes more of a puzzle that needs to be solved. My passive experiences are things like every month or so, I'll have a new knocking on our doors and windows, even though we live in a secure 3rd floor apartment. I get random prods and pokes when I'm by myself. Whispering, murmuring, growling, scratching, electrical interference, random myths, distorted shadows, and shadow figures here and there. This has all become a weekly occurrence, although when I say that, it's usually just one of these things that happen. I deal with it, and then it goes away almost immediately. The hitchhiker. This is probably my most fascinating one, because it's a recurring event that happens every couple of months, and I haven't yet solved the puzzle. I travel a lot for my role. At the moment, I've been sent to one of our small towns to train people, run mental health programs, or help with large-scale crisis responses. This results in my driving for long hours, sometimes during the day and sometimes at night. I will see the same stocky, hitchhiking figure walking along the side of the road in a black hoodie and jeans, with hood up and thumb out. I've never stopped, and he's never turned around when I've approached. I've seen him at every point in the day, at dawn, during the day, dusk, night. I've seen him in locations several hours drive from each location. At first I thought it was a coincidence, but hitchhiking is really uncommon in our country. We're small and buses are cheap. Howling. This is another recurring one, although it's newer. It's more annoying than anything else, to be honest, but several times my partner and I have been woken to a long howl in our bedroom. The windows are closed, apartment units like I said, but it's ruining my sleep and I really enjoy my sleep. Cloaked figure. This is one that I've thankfully resolved, but had to deal with over a series of years. To cut a long story short, whenever I was in the middle of a really tough case supporting someone in what we call spiritual warfare, I'd get a visit from whatever this was. It was the same every time, where I would have a dream of a cloaked figure, wake up to a spinning room, and be choking. I've had sleep paralysis episodes before, but this was certainly different. I'm still half convinced this was some kind of sleep apnea issue or episode. The only thing that makes me think it was paranormal is because it happened without fail when I dreamt of this figure, and it stopped after I put some intentional work into stopping it. There are experiences of clients that I cannot share because I've made a strict confidentiality agreement with them, and that rests on my soul. But generally speaking, I've helped people deal with their psychological issues more than spiritual ones. Some spiritual ones have been fascinating, and there's a feeling I get when there's a really obvious sign of oppression or infestation. It's like a heavy feeling in my chest and stuffy air. I've helped people by blessing their houses, which is a complicated process and, depending on your beliefs, can be somewhat risky. You essentially have to call forth the oppressing force, challenge it, rebuke it, and either condemn it or suppress it, if it can't be dealt with in one blessing. I've also helped people with deliverance, although I'm not big on the evangelical deliverance ministry. We're more of a traditional denomination, but I've never helped with an exorcism. I'm still relatively young for my role, and while I am a commissioned member of the order, I'm not yet a fully ordained minister. Processes. We have to be careful with what we share, and that's for a really inane reason. We often get people who either want to play a prank or desperately want something paranormal to be happening. And the information we don't share is essentially the key information we need while triaging our cases. What I can say is how we view the paranormal is unusual. Anything paranormal, by our theology, is demonological, angelic, or the Holy Spirit. When it comes to things that we humans get scared of, we're hardwired to be scared of the paranormal if we believe in it. It's a non-interactable nocturnal threat, and we are diurnal creatures. It's really easy to trigger our limbic system. However, and again just my view, I see paranormal activity as parlor tricks of a damned and jealous entity. But I have the power to send it back where it belongs, and it knows that, so it will struggle however it can. It will try to scare me because it is scared of me, and it should be. I'm there to do a job. It's like spiritual pest extermination, but a moving cup, whispering, growling, etc., is nowhere as scary to me as, say, driving in heavy rain, or the things I dealt with as a bouncer while I studied. Humans, dogs, even cats are more dangerous than most hauntings or paranormal experiences. One exception is that possession is incredibly dangerous, but intensely rare. I'm not scared of these things, not because I'm tough or brave, but because they're not actually dangerous, and they need to be condemned. That being said, if we go through an intensive investigatory process, it looks like this. We are a medical order. We're the Knights Hospitaller. We're also an indigenously focused arm of the order, and our indigeneity gives us a different worldview. When we assess a person, we don't just look at their spiritual health. We look at their social, physical, and psychological health as well. The first thing we will do, fully funded, is have the person see a doctor and a psychologist for assessment. This isn't because we think they're crazy, it's because we're building a comprehensive profile for exactly what we're dealing with. If someone is positive for physical or mental health issues that could be causing symptoms that they believe are spiritual, we need to treat those issues and see if the symptoms go away. Our church fully covers any costs associated with this process. If that doesn't solve the problem, my job is to definitively disprove the existence of paranormal activity or presences, but do so while believing there may well be a presence. Skepticism is a good thing most of the time, but it's sometimes bad. We're not there to assume the issue is mundane. We take all the information we can, assess it, and arrive at the likely outcomes, and we consider spiritual outcomes to be similarly as likely as mundane ones. However, we still need to disprove all of the mundane theories we can. But there's another layer. We also need to prove all of the mundane theories. This helps us have equality of information, so we won't be happy to say, oh, it's probably just this mundane thing, unless we can prove that. After this, if there is persistence of a spiritual issue, we begin our church-sanctified processes of blessings and protections for the affected individual. These interventions vary in intensity depending on the person, their faith relationship, and the persistence of whatever we're dealing with. How I got into the field. I didn't take a standard pathway. A standard pathway is that you attend a church that believes in demonological study, get as involved as possible with whatever you can, talk to the pastor about your desire to study, and follow this pathway, and see if the church will support you. It's a long pathway though. You can also try to become a lay chaplain for certain denominations, but honestly, the best thing you can do is wholeheartedly commit to a church, show them you're willing, and they'll support your journey. My pathway was that I studied a youth psych degree and specialized in youth gangs. Then a church was investing into the community and looking for a Christian with my expertise to be their youth pastor. I worked there for some time, and after a bit of a journey, came back to my home denomination, and that's who I work for now. I got a master's in professional practice, chaplaincy, and a diploma in demonology. But my psychology knowledge is what sets me apart from this ministry in the eyes of the church. I'm much more equipped to do a referral assessment than many of the clergy or congregation. My training in demonology comes from several sources. I completed the diploma at Bible College, but I've also done a small amount of training under a course from Bishop James Long. I did the Paranormal Academy of the United Kingdom online course because it's non-Christian, and I trained under our Archbishop for some time to specifically respond to the needs of the community in this regard. As a chaplain, this calling fit under my purview in his eyes. When I need to escalate church involvement, I can go straight to him. He taught me our beliefs, blessings, the processes of the church, etc. He also taught me our church's stance on demonology, which is old school. We're Anglican. King James was a demonologist, so it's a particular field for us. That's pretty much it. I'm always open to helping people on here, so if you have trouble, please just reach out through a message. I'm also happy to answer questions and engage in discourse, although I'm not going to be entirely engaging in what-ifs from the stories. For me, it's almost impossible to prove the paranormal online due to the nature of evidence and how easily it can be faked, so I'm not going to go into that, and I've peer-reviewed these things with my colleagues. Case notes for the bonus file: Chronicles of a Demonologist and a Chaplain. Honestly, this was just a cool set of stories, experiences, and just your life path and the training process to become a chaplain demonologist. So fascinating. I didn't know I would actually be so engrossed in a story like this, but it's really cool. It's one of the perks of reading stories constantly is I have to go and read so many of them. I am constantly surprised at what I find interesting. And I'm very impressed at how rigorously you apply the scientific method within this envelope of religious investigation. You wouldn't necessarily expect that from the outside point of view. The idea that religion is all just about faith, not investigation. Definitely bucks the trend in that. My thoughts about demons. Perhaps the most important question is, are most spirits just spirits and they're not demons? Demons are a separate category? Is it like in Supernatural where a demon is a soul that was twisted by being in hell and tortured for eons, and after a certain point they just break and become evil? Something like that, maybe? Or is it just a malicious spirit that died, a person that was evil, and then when they die, their spirit lingers behind and that's a demon? Is it interchangeable? And how are possessions possible? Because as you mentioned, they're extremely rare. There's very few stories I've read revolving around possession. I'm glad that they're rare, but it begs the question of why. Is it that difficult to possess someone? Because I mean, if a demon can do it, I'm assuming they would want to all the time. So there's a fundamental limitation on their ability to do it. Curious. But it's interesting how you describe spirits and supernatural events in the same way that I was thinking about it too. Like they're mostly just harmless parlor tricks, almost never harming someone or killing them. It's just meant to instill fear or even just make their presence known. But that's it. They don't seem to be able to do more, or they're not willing to. They're just a puzzle to be solved. Exactly as you say. I love that. And you know, I'm not specifically a religious person. I think I've mentioned that a few times on the channel. I consider myself agnostic. I don't know what the ultimate truth is. I don't know if we live in a simulation. I don't know if there's a God out there. I don't know if there is a God. Is it a Christian God, or Catholic, or Jewish, or Muslim, or any other sect of faith? I don't know. All I can say is I try to examine the world and base my life around that, and just look inside myself as well and think, okay, what is good and what isn't? Because I think we all have an innate sense of that. I think if you try to just be as good as possible in what we all have baked into us, if that's some cosmic rule, or if God wove us in a certain sense with this understanding of right and wrong, it's pretty clear cut, if you ask me. Don't harm others and be honest. And don't drop Dave. Definitely sinful to do that. But yeah, very cool stories. Very glad you shared this with us. And now time for the quote of the day. Brevity is the soul of wit. Shakespeare. This is something I need to apply to myself a bit more. I can go on tangents all the time. But yeah, this is similar to the expression of, if you can't explain something simply, you probably don't really understand it. The more you understand a complex topic, the more you're able to distill it down into a small nugget of wisdom. Like the video, subscribe, hit the bell. Kinetic Symphony signing off.